Hello, fellow humans. It is I, Trinity, back to explore another diverse fairy tale with you. Today we are going back to Africa via the Oxford Anthology of African Legends and Tales, and today our story is called Hare and the Corn Bins. Hare and the Corn Bins. In the old days, all the animals used to make farms like men do today. They hoed the ground, planted the seed, harvested the grain, and stored it in corn bins, which looked like little round huts, only instead of having a door in front, they had a circular hole at the top under the thatch. Once upon a time, Hare and the other animals worked hard on their farms all through the rainy season, and when the corn was harvested, they put it all together into a row of beautifully made little corn bins. "Now, where shall we spend the dry season?" the animals asked each other as they sat round the fire one night, tired with their weeks of farm work. Hare's eyes glittered cunningly as he answered, "I am going far away to see some of my relations. It is a place called Sit in a Corn Bin, and I shall go alone." The other animals discussed the merits of other places they knew, and at last each had decided where he would spend the dry season. Next morning they rounded up their cattle and went away to different places, each hoping that he had chosen somewhere where there would be enough pasture to feed his herds. "Goodbye, goodbye," called Hare. "When we return, we shall have plenty to eat and enough seed left over to plant our farms next season." He pretended to go away too, but as soon as all of the other animals were out of sight, Hare came back to the corn bins, climbed inside the first one, and began to have a feast. When he could eat no more, he slept, and when he awoke, he began on the corn again. At last, Hare found that the first corn bin was completely empty. "Well, I shall have to move," he exclaimed. But first of all, he filled the empty bin with gravel. Then he began on the second bin and lived a life of ease and plenty until that was finished, when he filled it with gravel as before. So the wicked animal continued all through the dry season, eating the corn which really belonged to the other animals, and by the time the first rains began to fall, Hare had emptied every corn bin and refilled them all with gravel. A few days later, the other animals began to return from their dry season grazing grounds until all were assembled except for Hare. "Where can he be?" they asked one another. "Hare is always the first back in the rains." "Well, he went a very long way this time," said one of them. "Some place called Sit in a Cabin, I think he said." "Let's all call loudly and see whether he is on his way," suggested another. So all the animals shouted, "Hare, Hare, where are you?" Now the cunning Hare was not far away. Indeed, he had not been out of sight of the corn bins all the time the other animals had been gone, but he hid behind a bush and answered in a very faint voice as from a distance, "I'm coming." "Listen," said the animals. "He is far away, but he heard us." And they began shouting again, "Hare, Hare, where are you?" This time, Hare's answer sounded a little bit louder. "I'm coming," he said, still hiding close by and splashing some water over his body so that it looked like perspiration. So they went on calling Hare while he answered louder each time, and then suddenly dashing out from behind his bush, he arrived in the middle of the group, panting as though he had run for miles. "Now we are all here," said one of the animals. "Let us look into the corn bins to see whether the grain has kept well." "You look," puffed Hare. "I've come too far today to do anything else except lie and rest." What shouting and crying arose when the animals looked into the bins, one by one, and discovered that every single one was empty of corn but full of gravel. "Who can have stolen it? How can we plant crops this season when we have no grain?" they sobbed. "It must be one of us, because nobody else ever comes here." Then they began to quarrel and snap and growl and bite, until at last they lay exhausted on the ground, and night came. "Let us all go to sleep now, and the animal on whom the moon first shines will be the guilty one," suggested the jackal. They all agreed to this, for they knew that the moon sees everything that happens on the earth, so they left it for her to decide. "Come and lie down beside me, squirrel," begged Hare. "I am so tired with my long journey that I shall get a cramp if I do not have somebody close beside me to turn me over from time to time." The good-natured squirrel lay close to Hare, and very soon all the animals were fast asleep, worn out after their long journey. All except Hare, of course. He was not at all tired, for he had scarcely moved from the spot for several months, so he was able to keep his eyes open for the moon, since he had an uncomfortable feeling that she was going to shine upon him. The night was cloudy and the moon was slow in rising, but suddenly her beam shot out like an arrow and landed directly on Hare. They landed on Squirrel too, since the two animals were so close together, and very carefully, so as not to wake Squirrel, Hare rolled quietly a few feet away. Then he began to sing, softly at first, but getting louder and louder so that several of the animals woke up. Then Hare, rubbing his eyes and pretending to only have just wakened, pointed to where Squirrel slept, and with the moon shining full on him. "There's the thief!" shouted Hare. "It was Squirrel who ate all our corn. The moon knows, you can be sure." Before poor Squirrel could utter a word in his own defense, the animals had leapt upon him and torn him to pieces, so nobody ever knew that it was Hare. But when any of the animals were heard to mutter, "Sit in a cow bin, sit in a corn bin," I wonder where that is. Hare always crept quietly away and waited until he heard them talking about something else. The end. Most obvious takeaway from this story is Hare is a dirtbag. Just not a good friend, not a good planting partner, just not a good part of the community, bad dude. And I think we all know people like this who are out for their own interest at the expense of other people, whether that's an accident or another benefit of the situation for them varies on the individual. But I definitely think that that's fairly common, where you find people who are more looking to use others as means to an end rather than just cooperating and helping each other. I did find it interesting at the very end that the Hare is having to skulk around and avoid conversations. And in my mind, I picture that as being like a kind of an anxious experience because, oh no, like I'm gonna get caught out doing something that I shouldn't have been doing. And you have to hold that secret and cover that lie for your entire life. So if you are maybe a politician and don't have an issue just denying truth and living in your own reality, that's probably fine. But if you're a normal person, I could definitely see it impacting your life negatively to have to hold this closely guarded secret and be scared of it getting out at any point. And also, in this specific case, what is Hare's plan for next year? Like, is he going to do this every year and it's just like someone's going to get killed every year? Or is he just doing like one on, one off? It just doesn't seem very sustainable to me. That's all I'm saying. Granted, I also make every effort to be as honest as possible and to not outright lie. But that's AA conditioning. So not everyone is committed to not telling a lie as I am. And so yeah, short and sweet commentary this week. Let me know what you think down in the comments. What's it like to harbor a secret like this? Could you hold a secret of your wrongdoing resulting in the death of someone else for the rest of your life? Would it eat you up inside? Or could you just kind of go about your business and be totally cool with it as long as you continue to get away? Let me know down in the comments. As always, like, subscribe, please share. I do notice every single subscriber, we're up to 32 now, which I'm very excited about, and it does keep me making these videos. So thank you so much, and I'll see you in the next one.